the Committee on Middle East Studies in the Department of History. My name is Arthur Goldschmidt, and I am a retired professor. I taught at Penn State up until the year 2000. I'm going to seem a little bit old-fashioned to some of you. The role I'm playing has long been a dream, one that I long thought would never come true. For I have known this speaker since 2010, admired his perspicacity, and mentored him as best I could. The man whom I have the great honor to introduce tonight was born and bred in Mosul, a city in northern Iraq. He attended his public schools and got his BA and MA in history from Mosul University. He was teaching there when the Islamic State forces seized control in June 2014. He refused to teach what the Islamic State demanded, but stayed in Mosul. Growing his beard and wearing what the IS required men to wear, he took to recording its murders, tortures, bullying, and smashing of ancient and Islamic monuments. He started an anonymous monthly blog called the Mosul Eye. No one knew he was the author, and the Islamic State guys wanted to capture and kill whoever was revealing their atrocities. When he sensed that the risk was growing that they might succeed, he left Mosul in a taxi to the Syrian border, taking just his hard drive and telling not even his mother where he was going or why he was leaving. For a few months, he lived as an illegal alien in Yale, Turkey, and continued to publish his blog. One night, I phoned him, and it was night where we are. He sounded awful. He told me the police had come to the door of his friend's apartment in which he was staying, and warned him that the Islamic State guys had found him, and he had just 1 hour to get out. He badly needed to get out of Turkey, and he must have been put in some sort of custody. Aided by friends of mine and of his, we managed to find him a job in Paris and supported his application for asylum in France. He worked for more than 2 years in a research center for Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, the Balkans, and Central Asia, and became a PhD candidate in the Advanced Center for the Social Sciences. Yale University's Greenberg World Fellows Program invited him to apply for a fellowship. I wrote a recommendation, and he was accepted for the fall of 2018. Penn State is the first university, other than Yale, that he wanted to visit. And as far as I know, we are the first university to host him. So please, my fellow Penn Staters, join me in welcoming to the lectern Omar Mohammed. If we're ever tied together, if I don't get this out of my pocket.
Thank you so much, all of you who are coming today. As I just told Ken Myers, I still don't believe it. I still don't believe that I am here. I was presented by him, that he was waiting for me last night, even though I met him like 1 month ago in New Haven, but I still don't believe it. I hope it's not a dream. My name is Omar Mohammed. I was born in a city called Mosul, one of the most ancient cities in the Middle East. I was born during the Iraqi-Iranian War in April 8, 1986. It was a dictatorship where we were grown up, a place where you are unable to ask questions. This is me, my family, my mother behind me, my sisters, and some of my uncles. It was a birthday. It was a secret photo. I couldn't, or any member of my family, show it to anyone until recently. In my primary school, my teacher told me, as I used to ask many questions, stop asking questions. You will not be allowed to ask questions until you become an adult. From that time, after she told me this. When I left the school, I went directly to the bookstore to buy a calendar so I can count the years when I become an adult. I still have this calendar in Musa. Just 1 year before I become an adult, and that year when I will be asked questions, I have been holding lots of questions. It was 2003. The Americans arrived in Iraq. And it was the US invasion to Iraq. In the aftermath of the occupation and the consequences of the occupation, many jihadist and extremist groups emerged. And they started killing people for various reasons, but mainly for asking questions. At that moment, I thought of my teacher's words, and I realized that questions can kill. But I didn't stop. I decided from that time, I was still young, I decided to write the history, to write whatever I see, whatever I hear, whatever I witness, so the people will not forget, or I will not forget what happened. I studied history for the sake of answers. I always loved chemistry. I wanted to be a chemist. But chemistry didn't give me answers to my questions, so that's why I went to history department. I studied the history, and I found something in the history that would help me to give me an answer why the Americans here, what they are doing here in Mosul, in Iraq in general. So I studied the history of the French occupation of Egypt, but still it didn't give me answers. So I continued, started doing more research. Then I became a teacher at the same university where I studied. At that time, the first thing I did in my first lecture, I told the students, you can ask questions here. But 1 year after I started teaching, something else happened. And now the so-called Islamic State, or Daesh, or ISIL, or whatever they call it, came to the city and occupied the city in June 2014. And in the aftermath of the occupation of ISIS, they closed and shut off the university. They said history department and other departments are unuseful sciences. You have to teach what we want. So I stopped. I left the university and I started something called, as you may know, Mosul Eye. Mosul Eye was a blog in the beginning to document what's happening in the city, when I was the only source inside Mosul to tell the story of the city under the brutal rule of the Islamic State in Mosul, when they killed journalists, they killed Christian, Yazidis, enslaved Yazidis, Yazidi women, more than 9,000 women were enslaved. They killed Sunni, they killed Shia, they killed everyone who refused or didn't obey to their rules. So I decided to take action. I decided to take the responsibility, even though I knew from the very beginning that the price for telling the truth is only one thing, that is death. I accepted the price. A few months later, after I decided to launch Mosul Eye, and after it was widely recognized, Mosul Eye became a tool for the resistance of the truth against the dark and the darkness of ISIS, the darkness they brought to the city. But I didn't want to be a journalist, even though people used to call me a journalist. I respect all the journalists, of course, but I am a historian. So I started telling the people that we are not facing just an occupation. We are facing a new narrative being imposed on our city, a narrative of ISIS that was brought to the city to destroy not only the buildings, not only killing the people, in the current moment, but also to destroy our future. And that's why I took my resistance from just writing to another level. So I started recording videos, started recording sounds, started publishing photos, and trying to defeat ISIS in its global platform, because ISIS had platforms, they were writing in 5 languages. So I decided to write Mosul Eye in English, because this is the platform where they were recruiting soldiers, they're bringing more people to the city. And I don't want to talk again about the atrocities. Probably you have seen this in the media, you have read about it. The daily, just a simple example of what I and the people of Musa have witnessed. We witnessed everyday executions, beheadings, stoning people, throwing people off high buildings, accusing them for being LGBTQ, cutting off hands, lashing women in the street, imposing hijab on women, taking taxes from the people. This was the daily scene we used to see every day. However, after 2 years of the occupation of ISIS, after 2 years of Mosul Eye, they were like, after they were using to send me threat after threat, I decided finally to leave the city, because the threat at that time was serious, and I feared about my family. I would accept if I was killed by ISIS, but if something happened to my family, I would never forgive myself. I would never live with it. So I decided to leave to protect my family, but not to stop my work against ISIS. So I left to Turkey, and from there I continued my work. After I left, 1 year after I left, the Iraqi government, the international coalition, they launched an offensive to retake the city from ISIS. And from that time, I thought that Mosul Eye would take another role, not only just writing against ISIS or telling the truth about the city. The first thing happened was, during the battle, a family was trapped in their house. They were trapped in their house. The man was killed by an airstrike. The woman was injured, and her children were also injured and trapped in the house. I received a message on my Facebook page, which is Mosul Eye, someone asking me, can you help me? And then he said, is this conversation private? I used to receive messages from ISIS claiming that they are civilians. So I told him, how can you prove you are not ISIS? Because he was contacting me from Australia. He said, I read about you in the news. I told him, what do you want? He said, you are my last hope. My niece is trapped in her house. I told him, what can I do? I'm not in Mosul. I'm not even in Mosul. So he helped me, giving me more information, and I thought I can do something. I took the information, I called her by phone, I geolocated her house, and I sent directly the information to the international coalition. After 3 hours, she was rescued and moved to Erbil. After that successful mission, I thought that Musa, I can do more. More families were trapped in their houses. They don't know how to geolocate themselves. They don't know how to ask for help. All they can do is calling their relatives, asking them for help. So I established a platform in Mosul Eye, asking people for information. Send your information if you need help. I ask for the phone number, and I call back the family, helping them, because, and this is how I discovered that I love Mosul so much, because when I talk to them, I describe the city to them as if I am with them. So I ask them about signs, if there is any school close to you, if there is any specific building, they tell me, and I help geolocating them. At the end, 92 families were rescued this way, using just Twitter, the phone, and the technology, helping with help from the international coalition. This is one of the families that was rescued. You see the boy, the young one, he was still unborn yet. His mother was pregnant. When I talked to them, they were crying. After they were rescued, the mother asked me for my name. I couldn't give her my name. I told her I'm still anonymous, I can't. I still have more things to do. She was insisting. I told her, I'm sorry. And then, after a few weeks, I learned that she gave him a name, which is a synonymous name to my name. She gave him a name, Farouk. My name is Omar. This is a synonymous name to Omar in Arabic. And this was the most beautiful thing happened in my life, that this boy is alive. This is one of the examples of helping families. 92 families. But it wasn't only people. I also rescued a lion and a bear. It's not too bad for a historian. The lion is now in South Africa. The bear is in Jordan. She's healing. She has a PTSD, but she will be fine soon. This is how they look now. I gave them names. I called the lion Simba and the bear Lula. They were used by ISIS in Mosul Zoo to torture prisoners. And here it came when I decided to reveal my identity finally, to take off all of these things off my shoulders. I was so tired, then I decided to go public. And here was the report in AP. After the liberation of the city, I told myself my mission didn't finish yet. So I decided to take Mosul Eye to another level, to rebuild a destroyed city. I didn't put any pictures related to the destruction because I don't want you to see it. I don't want to see it myself. I want to show this side of the story. This is behind them. It's the library which was destroyed and burned by ISIS, where we lost more than 800,000 books. We decided to play music there to show the world that we can survive and we can continue, and to tell ISIS that you couldn't defeat us, you couldn't impose your history or narrative on us. This is another concert I organized. We decided to choose this site, which is the Prophet Jonah site. I think it's the only site where the three religions are happy sharing, like they are always happy with this site. It's the only thing in Mosul. When you tell a Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, you can come here, they say yes, they accept the invitation. So we decided to play music here and to tell the world that this is Mosul, not the Mosul that ISIS wanted to show you. We also preserved books from the destroyed building of the library. We almost preserved 32,000 rare books from the library. I knew that we had a basement in the library and that we didn't lose everything. So we decided to organize a team. Most of them were females, and they went into the destroyed building, and this is what you see. The most important thing now is that we are focusing on rebuilding the city, and we started with the children. We are trying to open a cinema for the first time after 40 or 45 years. Music is being listened to in the city now. We have musicians. We have a female singer in the city now. There is a huge youth movement in the city. They are all eager to rebuild the city. There is an initiative run by the people, the locals, to rebuild the old city of Mosul. The university is working again. and the city is alive. ISIS couldn't destroy the city. It's not only doing activities inside the city, but we are also connecting Mosul to the world. This is the whole message of Mosul Eye, is to put Mosul on the global map. That's why I organized with a member of the European Parliament, who is a very old man. He looks like Dr. G. That's why I like him. We invited a musician, Australian musician, to play music. Because of the security situation, we couldn't invite him to Mosul. So we decided to organize it in Linz, city of Linz in Austria, and we broadcasted the music on the same screens in the street in Mosul. The screens were used by ISIS to show their atrocities, their propaganda, and their beheadings. And this is the result of the youth movement in the city of Mosul. This is how the young people look like now. They are eager to work, they are eager to rebuild the city. And I always go back to this picture, to see this picture and compare it with another picture, when ISIS brought donkeys inside the university. They brought cows inside the university campus. I always remind myself, comparing the two pictures, and whenever I see this, I say, yes, we defended ISIS. And it always tells me, because it was not easy for me to believe that I'm still alive, even when I left the city. It took me almost 1 year to realize I am alive. But whenever I want to remind myself that I am alive, I just look at this picture. And I know that Mosul one day will be a city where people from the West, from everywhere, will decide to go for a vacation. This is my dream. I still have a dream to build an opera house. I know that I will build this house in Mosul one day. I have one condition: I will be the manager of this opera house. And we started also a program to invite Western scholars to the city of Mosul. And I know that we will never die as long as we tell the truth. Because Mosul is a city of culture, coexistence, and it will welcome the Christian again. We are also welcoming the Jewish to come back again. One of the members of the Jewish community decided to go back to Mosul after we discovered the synagogue. It wasn't destroyed, we were so lucky, and it will be rebuilt. There are some programs to rebuild the old sites of the city which were destroyed by ISIS. And one day, I am sure that I will give a lecture inside Mosul, and all of you will be there listening to me. Thank you.
Are you willing to answer questions?
Yes? Yeah.
Thank you so much. David Robbie from Penn State. And
Just before you finish, please, I just forgot to mention that we have 3 people from Iraq here, 4. 2 from Mosul, 1 from Baghdad, and the other from Kurdistan, right? So I am surrounded also by Mosulis here.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much, Sayyid Yunus and Iraqi, for this great effort to save Mosul and a lot of great things with this city, the archaeology and the history of the city of Mosul. My question is, ISIS has always claimed that they have resources and they have, they're not always about fight, they claim at least. They have resources of computer security things, and they could find anyone, they could chase anyone. So I'm really surprised, they could not get to you while you were active, helping people and doing other things. Any reflection on this?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even though they didn't have like full control over the internet, but I managed to use some websites, some browsers, just like tool. There was a website called Cyber Arab where they give some courses on how to hide your identity online. It was also more about how to protect yourself on the ground, not just online. Using some like VPN programs. I used to stop reporting from time to time, changing my IP from time to time. Yeah. Yes, Dr. G.
Would you like to talk about your role as an advisor to UNESCO?
Yeah. I don't know if they will allow me to talk about this, but I will talk. Anyway, I am now working as an advisor on Mosul affairs for the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. My role is to design programs for the rebuilding of the historical sites. I'm lucky to be in this position because they are listening to what I say, and we are designing a project together to build all the religious sites, Jewish, Christian and Islamic, as well as Yazidi sites in the city. And I hope that these religious sites will help the people of Mosul to come together again, because what ISIS did and the consequences of ISIS were really huge, deep in the roots of the society. The society was kind of like destroyed. I hope this will help the people to come back together. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the resources going into rebuilding Mosul? I think for most Americans, after Mosul was retaken, the news about its rebuilding pretty much dropped away quite a bit. And the last I'd heard, the Iraqi government didn't have a lot of resources to put into it, and they weren't expecting much from anybody else.
Yeah, the international resources are not that big actually. What they are focusing on, especially UNDP and mainly the American and the British missions to Iraq, they are focusing on the infrastructure. It's kind of like 90% destroyed. The health sector is still completely damaged in the city. We don't have a hospital now. 5 hospitals were destroyed. 5 bridges were destroyed by airstrikes. Some of the activities of the international community, especially the UNDP. UNDP is a United Nations Program for Development. They are focusing on the outskirts of the city, especially the Yazidi areas in Sinjar, because it's also heavily damaged. But it's still not that enough. And when Iraq went to Kuwait conference, they were expecting too much and they got almost nothing. Please.
Question, Mosul, very big city, ISIS, very small force relatively, right? And the initial takeover of Mosul by such a small force begs the question about the population of Mosul, how much collaboration there was. There must have been a lot of people put in very, very difficult situations where you had to deal with ISIS or do their dirty work or play along, and some guys may have joined. So now that ISIS is gone, how has Mosul dealt with that issue? Or is there retribution? Is there a lot of sense of young military men who may have joined ISIS at one point but now have come back to their communities and have been reintegrated? Is that an issue?
Just commenting on what you said about the collaboration of the people. When ISIS came to Mosul, they were almost 300, but they almost took over the city without fight because the security forces in all of its kind withdraw from the city. The 9th of June, there was no single Iraq soldier. So it wasn't about collaboration of the people. The city was empty. About the ISIS and the aftermath and after the liberation, almost all ISIS leaders, if they were alive, they fled the city. Some of them, like some reports say they are based in Turkey. but their families are captivated in camps, isolated. There are almost 3,000 families, women and children, captivated in the camps. The others are in the prisons waiting for trials. The problem is it seems to me that there is no plan for the Iraq government to deal with this issue because it's big, because it's not only about the local fighters, it's also about the foreigners. The European countries, they don't want to take their fighters because, especially in Britain, if they take them back, they know that they will release them. As France did recently, they released 100 of them. They fought in Iraq and Syria. So it's more about the legal work in Iraq. There are some people who are trying to make this kind of like international issue because it's not only locals. We have more than 25,000 foreign fighters involved in this. To make it a global and international court is better to bring justice to not only to the victims, but also to the families, the relatives of ISIS who did nothing, just they were ISIS relatives, and most importantly for the reconciliation in the city, because we just don't want to continue our life taking retaliation or revenge. Yeah. Yes?
You mentioned reconciliation. I'm wondering if that is a predominant view of Mosul residents, or if there's still a fair amount of factionalism or traditional distrust in one group against the other that's preventing or very much slowing a reconciliation process.
The problem about reconciliation is that nobody is ready for it. Not the Yazidis, not the Christian, not the Sunnis, not the Shia. And to be honest, it's not like what the media throw about the situation in Iraq. It's not about conflict between religions. It's more about the political corruption in the country. When you have a corrupted government, you can't achieve anything. You can't get any results from any reconciliation. It's the matter of the political corruption, the economical corruption. There are demonstrations in southern Iraq now, people asking for clean water. The government is not ready for reconciliation while other people are asking for clean water. Once you have a strong government, you can do the reconciliation. Yeah. Please.
Share your perspective on the U.S.'s counterterrorism strategy against ISIS.
Sorry, I didn't get your question. I didn't hear you.
Can you share your perspective on the U.S.'s strategy against ISIS?
The U.S. strategy is only focusing on military, and they are only focusing on the ground. Defeating ISIS on the ground is not enough. It's more about, let me be honest here. I know you have heard of the Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, who's a friend of mine. This is one of the consequences of the U.S. strategies in fighting against terrorism in Middle East. They are simply collaborating with another terrorist governments. They are just governments, but they are practicing the same thing that ISIS is doing. Instead of dealing with people, instead of reducing this terrorism, it's not only just defeating ISIS on the ground. They defeated ISIS in Mosul, but ISIS is doing a comeback now. There are some reports that ISIS is doing or finding more financial resources, and they are good at this. I am afraid that the US still have this lack of understanding of what's happening in Middle East, and they really seriously need to change this strategy. They should stop focusing only on military. It takes more beyond military. It's the corrupted governments there that create more terrorism. So what's the meaning of fighting against ISIS in 2015, 2017, and after 10 years you will get another ISIS? Because you have the reasons, you have the means that create ISIS. we have another we are waiting for another ISIS in Yemen because there is a war in Yemen. The same in Libya. We are expecting another ISIS in Africa. It's about the corrupted governments that is being supported by the United States. Yeah. Please.
Is there nostalgia for Saddam Hussein, or is there a sense that that was a corrupt government and everything in between was horrible, but now there's hope for something new?
Because of the failure state after 2003, and because of the civil war in Iraq, and all what's happening in the country, the people are nostalgic not to Saddam Hussein, but to the time when he was there. I'm afraid that if you ask anyone in Iraq now, what do you prefer? To stay under the rule of Saddam or living in this chaos? They will say under Saddam. It's not necessarily that they are supporting or they are willing to get Saddam or Ba'ath back. But what we have witnessed since 2003, the rule under Saddam would be nothing. It would be like democracy. Please.
Thank you, Doctor. With regard to the historical roots of ISIS, do you think that ISIS has historical and ideological roots in the history, or is a new phenomenon? Because, as you said before ISIS, there was a sectarian war, sectarian conflict. Before the sectarian conflict, there was a dictatorship, and there is a history. So, don't you think that we shouldn't fight ISIS only in military way, or we shouldn't only rebuild the infrastructure of Mosul or Iraq? We should rebuild the culture. We should rebuild the way of thinking.
I completely agree with
That's
this.
it's complicated.
Yeah. There's always roots in the history for terrorism. Islamic or non-Islamic terrorism. They always have roots. But the problem is not with these roots. The problem is, how do we deal with this history? Who is controlling this narrative? Because the government was weak, because of the problems that you mentioned, the civil war, 30 years of dictatorship, all this fed the narrative of ISIS that told the people at the end, there's only one way to take your rights back, is to fight and to use this terrorism. They have theological sources in the history of Islam. Islam gave them the opportunity to interpret, or not only to ISIS, anyone, any Islamic group, they can easily interpret the religion to their interest. But when you have a strong government, when you have a democracy in the country, who would think of fighting against the government using like 14th century ago narratives? It's about democracy. It's about the daily lives. It's about the services in our countries. If you tell the people in southern Iraq now, would you follow the government or fight against the government? They will say, we will fight against the government. When they start fighting, they will start finding their roots in the history in order to shape their organization. But if you offer them, like, we are in 2018, and we are talking about southern Iraq, in a city like rich of oil, they don't have clean water. It's the same happened in Mosul. I myself, I remember, and Dr. G is aware of my trip to Egypt. When I went back from Egypt to Iraq, it was 2011, I was so happy. I am the first one who traveled outside Mosul from my family, going to the American University of Cairo. In the street, I was going to the university. A soldier saw me talking in the phone because it was forbidden to use your phone while you are walking in the street. And he started hitting me with his weapon. Well, I am educated, I can understand, I didn't become a member of any terrorist groups. But we are talking about people who have no education, people who have nothing for their daily life, for their living or their livelihood. What can we expect from them? So, of course, it has social roots, historical roots, political roots, and I'm afraid that we are creating more ISIS than we ever think. Yeah? Please.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you mentioned briefly that ISIS was proficient with technology, and that's something that was played up in the West, that ISIS used social media very effectively, they used it to recruit foreign fighters, which is something you addressed, but you also used social media effectively as well, and for kind of opposite ends. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that technology played, both to you as someone trying to resist ISIS, but also for ISIS as a way of recruiting people and as a way of maintaining control or maintaining fear among the population.
Up to 2016, Facebook and Twitter were the main platforms for ISIS, for its propaganda and for recruiting more people. But after 2016, there was a British program to delete all the contents of ISIS. So they moved to Telegram. Without these platforms, the social media platforms, Twitter, whether it's Facebook or WordPress, the blogs, I couldn't do anything because this was the only platform. ISIS itself, well, the only difference between me and ISIS is they were really good at using these platforms. And they have experts using these platforms. Mainly, they call them the lonely wolves, who were based in the West, especially in Europe, and they were recruiting, using the social media, recruiting people. I think the last week we hosted, not me, one of my colleagues hosted, she called him a former jihadist. I don't know if a jihadist can ever be a former jihadist. However, she said that he is a former jihadist, he is Pakistani American, and his work was recruiting people online. He talked a lot about this. They really know what to do and how to do it. And they also develop their own encrypted applications. They are not only using the platforms we know. So that's why we say the fight against ISIS is not just using military. Please.
Another question. One more question. You're connected to the United Nations, and I'm wondering what kind of reception the current situation in Mosul, or maybe even the larger situation in Iraq, is getting in general in the United Nations.
I am with the UNESCO, not the United Nations. Okay. Yeah. They are trying to do something. The damage is huge, especially in Mosul. Almost 79 ancient historical sites were destroyed by ISIS. Even though we still have more, but it would take years to rebuild what they destroyed. And we can never replace what has been. Yeah.
Well, obviously we want to thank you we certainly want to thank you very much for this illuminating talk. And I have a small token for you. I always learn new things about Omar. Every time he opens his mouth, he tells me something I didn't know before about him. I never knew that he saved a bear and a lion from extinction. And of course, everybody in this audience knows that the lion is very important to us. And it seemed to me that since he often uses the logo, Yale loves Mosul, I thought maybe we should make an honorary Penn Stater out of this Yale man. So you reach in the bag, you'll see a little present for you.
Thank you.
So that you will now be an honorary lion.